Today on the Big 6 in 60, the Broncos could get a key player back in the backfield this week.
JK Dobbins was probably the offensive MVP for the Denver Broncos.
Duke sues former quarterback Darian Mensah over his transfer.
What a story, what a day, what a moment we found ourselves in sports.
And Luka drops a triple-double in Denver to beat the Nuggets.
Masterful effort from Luka Doncic. This was as good of a win as they've had this season.
This is the Big 6 in 60, the 6 biggest national sports stories from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 60 minutes. The Big 6 in 60 starts now. Thank you for making the Big 6 in 60 your first listen of the day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com and win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. The Broncos will face the Patriots without their starting quarterback this weekend, but Denver could get running back JK Dobbins back from IR. Locked On Broncos hosts Cody Rourke and Sayer Bettinger look at the possibility.
Talking heads continue to say that Denver doesn't have a chance. I think the Broncos like being in that position. I think that they thrive in that here. But even though that there is going to be no Bo Nix, who underwent successful surgery on Tuesday of his ankle, the thing that we have to look at here is the return of somebody else who was important to the offense. JK Dobbins set to practice here today for the first time since having surgery on his foot.
Before Bo Nix came through in so many clutch situations over the course of the entire 2025 season, I think everybody would agree JK Dobbins was probably the offensive MVP for the Denver Broncos, right? And so the opportunity, the potential, even the fraction of a chance to get him back for the biggest game of the season so far, I understand why everybody in Broncos country is giddy about this news, Cody. And look, JK Dobbins isn't doing anything to throw a wet blanket over this, because he posted on his Instagram a picture of him running out of the tunnel with the soon emoji, right? So he's fueling the fire. The Broncos obviously activating his 21-day practice window. It will be very interesting to see how they approach this. I mean, let's say the optimistic aspect of this, right? Let's say JK suits up for the AFC Championship game. I don't think even Broncos country's most optimistic fans, including myself, should expect him to go out there and carry the ball 20 times or anything like that. So even if he does play in this game, Cody, I think you're going to see spots. And so that's what I'm expecting anyway. But I also believe that the Broncos wouldn't be activating his window now if they didn't think there was at least a chance, right? Because you told us last week that JK was out there on the side field at the end of the week. Is the first time we've seen him. You told us also that he's been out there at the games while he's been recovering. And that's not always the case for players who are injured to be out there like on the sideline and things like that. So very, very interesting development here that could ultimately give the Broncos not just a boost on the field, but think about the morale. Think about the intangible boost that this could give the locker room to have this guy. That's why I posted on my Twitter page. I know some of our listeners are like, why does this guy keep talking about the Mighty Ducks? The Dean Portman return after one of the periods against the varsity team. That's what it reminds me of, right? It's like it just gives you such an intangible jolt to have somebody, one of your key leaders on the team, to come back in this way.
Yeah, and he was getting off to such a great start too. I mean, he was having the most productive year by a Broncos running back really since Phillip Lindsay had that back in 2018. He was on pace to surpass maybe 1,300 yards rushing on the ground, which we were like, hey, wait, when the Broncos had when's the last time they had a 1,000-yard rusher? Oh, yeah, it was Phillip Lindsay. He was the last to be able to do that, and that was very, very long ago. That was just 2.5 years removed, Sarah, of Denver's Super Bowl 50 win, which when you think about how long it has been from then to now, it is crazy to see that serve as the type of production here. But here's where I want to kind of, embrace some realism for Broncos country as it pertains to JK Dobbins, because with that, if he returns, yes, it's big, but here are the questions that we have about that. For JK, he hasn't ran the football in between tackles. He hasn't had contact. He hasn't been stepped on, so to speak, which happens all the time when you're playing the position. He hasn't had that since he had the injury in Week 10 against the Las Vegas Raiders. And, man, he suffered the injury. He even picked up a key first down after the fact, played through it. And I know he was frustrated things went, but for JK, this is kind of a tough spot for him because it's almost a gamble, right? If he tries to come back and play on Sunday, he's trying to do it, not only boost the morale of the offense, but on top of that, say, hey, coach, I was so valuable this year, which I don't think anyone's going to say he wasn't valuable, but also he's trying to get another contract extension here with the team or maybe audition for another team. I know he wants to stay in the Mile High City, but I think the biggest things we have to see is how does he handle coming back in a sense? Is it going to be similar to what we saw with Ben Powers, where Ben Powers' 21-day window opened, but they held him out just so we can get more contact with him, right? Does that change in the playoffs? Because next week isn't guaranteed, or 2 weeks from now. The Super Bowl isn't guaranteed unless you beat the New England Patriots on Sunday. So where does this all come down to? I think so much of it has to be, how does JK feel? How does the coaching staff feel? And what does that mean for the running back rotation, which has already kind of had some up and down questions as is coming into obviously this game, but even throughout the entire season. If JK can be a full participant, let's say hypothetically today, tomorrow, and Friday, I think there would be a chance that he could play. But I'm just trying to get Broncos country prepared. Even if he's a full participant, let's say on Thursday and Friday, he could still be ruled out because the Broncos, maybe they believe, maybe they have hope, which they do. They believe that they'll beat the Patriots and that they'll go to the Super Bowl. But that would be the best, I think, overall timeline for a guy like JK. So it is a tough timeline right now here.
It really is. And that's the difficult part of it, is like, you don't want everybody to be let down, right? If you're the Broncos, you're activating his window, but at the same time, it's not only realism in terms of, all right, he like just suffered this injury in November. Like, it wasn't that long ago that he went on IR. And I think most folks were probably saying like he's not going to be able to come back at all this season. And then Sean Payton kind of gave the glimmer of hope, like, well, I don't know, we'll see, late in the year, right? So I guess if they've had this circled as the target date all along, then maybe they're just trying to make it happen. Maybe they're trying to manifest it, right? But either way, I feel like you're going to need more out of Jaleel McLaughlin and RJ Harvey in this game, because you're not going to be able to just completely lean on JK Dobbins. And what we saw in the divisional round in the running game, especially, like Jaleel McLaughlin's fumble, Cody, that was recovered by the Broncos, thankfully. I mean, we didn't really get a chance to talk much about that, but that was a potential game-changing play that thankfully never happened, right? So I wonder if that's the reason why Sean Payton put so much pressure on Bo Nix in that game. I mean, in a shootout, obviously, you're going to throw the ball a little bit more, but just the trust went out the window at that point, I think, for the running game. After Jaleel fumbled that ball, it just felt like it was like, all right, like, we're not screwing around with this. Bo gives us the best chance to win. We're putting the ball in his hands. So that's where I'm saying, hey, you got to rely on these other guys maybe a little bit more, reset the board for those two backs as well, even if JK does play in this game.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see how they approach this week too, because I think we can all sit here, Sarah, and look at the New England Patriots defense, the players that they have. Obviously, Milton Williams on the defensive line, he's a disruptor. He is a very good player. They have athletic linebackers there. It's going to be the Ellis Brothers Bowl here, as Christian Ellis obviously is going to be facing off against this offense here, and Jonah defensively going to be facing off against Drake May and company. But the idea here is that, okay, if the New England Patriots are coming to Denver and they're saying, you know what we're going to do? We're going to shut down the run. We want Jarrett Stidham to throw the ball. That's probably going to be their approach here, because they like the players that they have in their secondary. They got athletic guys. We'll see where I think Carlton Davis is throughout the week. I know he was in the NFL's concussion protocol, but you still got Christian Gonzalez, who is a very, very good player. And you have some really good safeties as well that have the combination of play in the backfield, climb over the top in quarters coverage, and make plays if you try to take some deep shots. But they also come up and play well against the run. It is a Mike Vrabel style of defense here that we're going to see from the New England Patriots. So this is, I think, while people on paper are like, Denver doesn't match up well, we'll see what the Broncos and Sean Payton have up their sleeves here for them going forward here.
The NFL playoffs are rolling along, and FanDuel is officially in playoff mode. Every game day during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers every reason to get in on the action. Right now, every NFL playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost pack waiting for them inside the app. Each game day, you'll see a pack loaded with multiple profit boosts you can apply to the bets you like most. Open your profit boost pack first thing on game day and see what boosts you want to apply. The boost lets you lean into your game day instincts, whether you're backing momentum, defense, quarterback, player, coaching. every play feels bigger, and the boosts make your bets feel that way too. Visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game day.
Welcome back to the Big 6 and 60. The Rams face a tall test this weekend in the top-seeded Seahawks, with Seattle coming off a blowout win over San Francisco. But LA could have a key advantage in the matchup. Doug McCain from Locked On Rams explains.
Now let's start with the injury news. The Rams got some good injury news. They're going to be in really great shape on Sunday. Sean McVay gave some updates, and he said that there's really not very many concerns coming out of that divisional round win against the Chicago Bears. He said that Byron Young, the Rams edge rusher, does have a sore knee. It's going to possibly limit his snap count. That's why he was limited to a season-low snap count against the Bears, but he's expected to be able to play against the Seahawks in the NFC Championship game, so hopefully he'll be further along in his little mini recovery. This was a small setback for BY. And then Emmanuel Forbes Jr., he left the game after playing just 4 snaps due to a shoulder injury. He did not return to action, and Sean McVay said that it should not limit him in the NFC Championship game. Both are expected to play. Other injury news, Josiah Stewart and Deshaun Johnson, they played more snaps, so that's kind of where they would go. Josiah Stewart has been really a quiet, emerging player for the Rams this year. Deshaun Johnson saved his best football toward the end of the season. So they're in a pretty good spot as far as depth goes, to where if Byron Young's snap count is limited once again, that they got dudes that can step up and provide some valuable snaps and just go to work. And then you've got Emmanuel Forbes, Roger McCreary, and Darius Williams. They played well. Kobe Durant, he was their best cornerback, and he has been for the last couple of weeks. So could this be a situation where, because of how McCreary and how Darius Williams looked with Emmanuel Forbes out, do you give them more of the snaps early in the game just to see, or do you put Emmanuel Forbes back and say, okay, since he's fully healthy, you want to get that opportunity? Because this is a major matchup. You got Jackson Smith and Jigba, the second best receiver in the NFL in 2025, of course, with our own Puka Nacua being first. But it is definitely going to be one of the big questions heading into this matchup, because that's what it's going to come down to, really, is can the weaknesses that became a strength for the Rams in that win over the Chicago Bears that we are still buzzing about, Ramley, where Kobe Durant had 2 big interceptions, where Cam Curl saved the season laying out for an interception. Can you continue that momentum? So we'll get into some more takeaways, and we'll talk about kind of what we really learned from that game that can be transferred to the Bears game, because every game really takes on a life of itself. Matthew Stafford, he was clutch once again down the stretch. I don't know if you guys saw the clip of Matty Stafford and going cross-body on the right hash for an out route to Devontae Adams, and the throw he made there, just an impossible angle that really no quarterbacks are going to attempt. But also him flipping off that QB jacket and the equipment manager just catching on the fly. If you haven't seen that clip, go look for it. Definitely one of the clips of the week, no doubt about it. But when you look at where this Rams team is, and you keep going into the takeaways from the win, you got to look at that defense. I rewatched the game multiple times at this point, and look, you're always going to start with offense when you have Sean McVay and Matthew Stafford and Devontae Adams and Puka Nacua and Kyron Williams and all of these stars on offense. You don't have those big name brand stars on the Rams defense. Yes, Jared Verse is going to ultimately be one of those guys, but the defense really stood out. And it wasn't just going bananas on 4th down and finding a way to make those stops on 4th down, where they had 3 4th down stops, 2 in the red zone, 2 right outside of the red zone, that ultimately won them the game, because 1, Ben Johnson wasn't taking the points in those situations, and 2, you were stopping momentum drives from the Bears. It was beyond that. In the third quarter, the Rams gave up just 19 total yards to the Bears in a quarter where the Rams offense really just struggled to get the points up, to score touchdowns, to build some separation. It was the defense that was keeping that Bears offense at bay. And after that opening drive touchdown and going away with that field goal drive at the end of the half, the offense, they struggled. I mean, they had 42 yards of total offense from that span up until heading into the fourth quarter. The offense, their success rate sat at 35.5%. Here's a name that Rams fans don't want to hear. It's Brett Rippon, the worst quarterback we've seen this organization in quite some time. That success rate was the lowest that we've seen since Brett Rippon was in a game, not ripping anything for the Rams. So it was the defense. They had very minimal margin for error, and they stepped up. So, look, enjoy the last couple of games for Chris Shula. I was on a Pittsburgh radio station. I was pushing for him to be their head coach. He not only stopped anything in that stretch and bottle up the run game when they needed to and stop the explosive plays, but it was the 3 turnovers, 3 stops on 4th downs, and he just absolutely made life miserable at times for Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson. So just think about that. It was Chris Shula that was the guy that was behind the Sean McVay versus Ben Johnson, the Matt LaFleur, and kind of the beef between them. Don't forget Chris Shula. That's Sean McVay's boy, man. They grew up in this football world together. So, yeah, on top of that, the Bears went 3 for 6 on 4th down. A couple of times you saw 3rd and 4th and short in those situations. And the Rams, they are not a team that gets a lot of stuffs and negative plays in the run game. They were doing that. So I said it after the game. I said on yesterday's show, all the talk around the NFL is why didn't Ben Johnson go for 2? Why didn't Ben Johnson go for 2? And I've heard so many people say, oh, it's just because, look, you're at home. You're going to take it to overtime. You got the momentum. You want to give your chance to win. And I know why the Rams didn't have to face that situation. I know why the Bears didn't go for 2. It was because Ben Johnson was terrified of going up against this Rams defense. And he had already used some of those big plays, some of those wrinkles earlier in the game, and he's kind of burned his 4th down plays, which sometimes can be your 2-point conversion plays. So the defense, just an absolute incredible performance from them when they needed it the most on a cold night where the offense and Matthew Stafford were off for long stretches. It was the defense that stepped up in a game where they had to have it. 85 Bears defense. How about the 2026 Rams defense? Oh, and one more thing before we go to break here. I heard so many players after the game. Kobe Durant mentioned it pretty emphatically. What did I say this entire week? I said that this Rams team was going to take it very personal that national pundits and all these so-called experts around the NFL world were parroting the same take about, oh, the cold is going to hurt the Rams. The Rams, LA, West Coast team playing in a little canopy roof. It's not a complete dome. Air gets in there. And people were saying the Rams can't win in the cold. Well, it's going to be a cold winter for the Bears because their season's over, and the Rams are the team that advanced. And I heard so many players talk about how they had some extra motivation because really what you're doing in that situation is you're questioning a team's toughness. You're basically throwing on the soft label without throwing on the soft label. And I love the fact that this team took that to heart and they had that extra motivation, and it clearly worked out because what does Sean McVay always say? Be at your best when your best is needed. And the Rams got the best performance of the year from their defense when it was absolutely needed. You got the A game from the Rams defense. If they even brought their B+ game, I think they'd probably lose that football game. But guess what? The defense showed up, they showed out, and they're now headed to the NFC Championship game.
Quarterback Darian Mensah wants to transfer from Duke, but the Blue Devils have decided to take things to court. It's a complicated situation, and JJ Jackson from Locked On Blue Devils tells us more about it.
What a story, what a day, what a moment we found ourselves in sports, Michael. Thank you for taking the time to be with me on the show.
You got it, JJ. Yeah, this is a potentially game-changing lawsuit, not obviously for Duke and Mensah, but more broadly for college sports, because it's about this new world we're in where colleges can directly pay athletes for NIL. And will this be the start of instances where Mensah's a college student at the end of the day? I mean, we think of him as a quarterback, but he is a college student, and typically students can transfer to schools that admit them. So this is an interesting case where he signed a contract. It's tough to say he can't transfer. The question is going to become, can he both play and sign a separate NIL deal with the new school? Obviously, there are reports that it's Miami, but we'll see.
Yeah, there's been so many football storylines to follow with this, but the bigger picture here is, I mean, it's the money and the business that's involved here. You go a couple of weeks ago when Mensah makes the decision that he's coming back to Duke. He self-produces this hype tape video that he's going to be playing quarterback for the Blue Devils next season. And then you see what Miami goes through, kind of looking for their next quarterback, and they're kind of rumored to be the next landing spot. And at the last minute, the last possible day to put your name into the transfer portal, Mensah decides to make that decision. Looking at this now, though, Duke making the decision to sue Darian Mensah. I think a lot of people were pushing for this from the fan perspective, obviously. And it seems like this is the right play for Duke to, change what could possibly be the future of sports, like you're saying.
Yeah, Duke has the contract, right? So they believe that, he signed the contract and it ends at the end of this year, 2026. So they believe they have a legal right.
One more season, yeah.
And, in a normal world, in pro sports, they would easily win. It's this twist of college sports where NIL appears to be functioning more like employment, right? That it's a retention. It's a device for retention, that if you sign a multi-year contract with an employer, you can't leave them. But neither Duke nor any other college wants to describe the players as employees. So they have this sort of fiction, right? It's this fiction that NIL kind of links an athlete to a school. And it will be interesting to see how it plays out, because his ability to transfer can't be stopped. He can transfer he's a student. So the question is going to become, if he transfers, can he be paid or will he owe Duke money? I mean, most likely this probably gets resolved in a settlement, but Duke is doing something that clearly other schools are happy to see, because they want to see this case brought.
What does it take for him to reach that employment? I get what you're saying, and that's obviously what a lot of people want to talk about. Is it another kind of federal ruling that takes place? This is where, I'm naive in the matter, coming to you as the legal expert here, but how do we fix this in college sports to where they are viewed as employees? Is that right? Is that the right answer?
Well, colleges don't like that answer, because they don't want more employees, because that would mean that they're owed potentially healthcare, they're owed if there are any retirement benefits, and many universities have that for employees. So the challenge for schools is that they worry about the cost implications. And then moreover, there's the NCAA, which has sort of this fidelity to amateurism, that the athletes are students who play a sport. They've pivoted a bit from that with the House settlement to have direct payments. But the reality is that to recognize them as employees would require several ways, none of which have happened yet. But one would be successful litigation. There's Johnson versus NCAA, which is a case in Pennsylvania, arguing that the athletes are employees under the FLSA. That's a federal law that guarantees minimum wage. So there, the athletes would be student workers. So that just like work study students, they would be paid along those lines. Other matters, there was Dartmouth, more my neck of the woods, Dartmouth College. The men's basketball players formed a union and were progressing to be recognized as employees under the NLRA, which is a separate federal law that provides the potential for unionizing. So we could see it happen at a state university, which is not governed by the NLRA. It would be governed by state law. But what I think this case is going to lead to will be lawyers who are pushing for employment recognition to say, hey, what's going on with Duke and Mensah and Miami? They're really just talking about him going to play football at one school or another. This is not about being a student. This is about playing football. And we can sort of say it's about being a student, but fundamentally it's about football.
Yeah, and the sooner we accept that, I think the better off we'll be. And that's obviously, yeah, go ahead.
In this case, doesn't have to happen in that world, right? Because if he's an employee and he signs a multi-year employment contract to play at Duke, he doesn't leave. He can't leave. There would be, so it's this world where NIL is functioning as an employment device that it leads to uncertainty.
Clearly, a lot of people that watch this will be in the pro Duke camp and that sort of thing. And that's where I think, they went through such a long process last year, even putting together a contract like this, and had so many of their own kind of legal experts putting in thought as to what it would look like and that sort of thing to hopefully not end up here. And yet here we are.
Yeah, and they include an arbitration provision. So the parties were thinking, if there is a dispute, let's have this go to arbitration so that it's not conducted in public. Instead, I think Duke sensed that he was going to leave. He enters the portal. They want an injunction to block him from doing that. Now, from what I understand, I know this may not be broadcast immediately, so we'll see what the facts are when this is broadcast. My understanding is the judge has ruled he can enter the portal, but that doesn't mean he can necessarily play football in another school or, more importantly, sign an NIL deal. That's going to be the sticking point, right? If he goes to Miami, can he sign for more money in Miami? Duke is saying, no, you can't because you've agreed to this Duke contract. In a normal world, this gets resolved through a financial agreement that he would pay damages to Duke. And maybe that's ultimately what happens.
I'm certainly going to be following along to see kind of what the next moves are for both of these parties, Darian Mensah and Duke. And unfortunately, we're in this position because, again, from the football side of things, this is a quarterback who brought you your first ACC championship since the 80s. He's setting school records at the position. You're hoping one day he'll be representing Duke in the NFL, and Miami comes calling. And in a world where you can kind of just look for better opportunities, one came along for Mensah, and, he should be pursuing the larger payout and that sort of thing. It's just like you said, the legality of Duke wanting to push his contract.
Yeah, and some say, well, can't they agree to not poach or something like that? I mean, yeah, and that will lead to an antitrust lawsuit because then it will be competing schools joining hands to restrain the labor market. And this is where, if they were employees and they could unionize, all of these antitrust issues go away, just like in the NFL. Right? There's free agency. There's rules about free agency. There's franchise tags, things like that. It's all allowable because there's a union that collectively bargains. And so the fruits of that bargaining are exempt from antitrust scrutiny. But colleges don't want. Colleges want to sort of come up with rules on their own, and they get into antitrust trouble, as we've seen over the last 15 years.
The NFL playoffs are rolling along, and FanDuel is officially in playoff mode. Every game day during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers every reason to get in on the action. Right now, every NFL playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost pack waiting for them inside the app. Each game day, you'll see a pack loaded with multiple profit boosts you can apply to the bets you like most. Open your profit boost pack first thing on game day and see what boosts you want to apply. The boost lets you lean into your game day instincts, whether you're backing momentum, defense, quarterback play, or coaching. Every play feels bigger, and the boosts make your bets feel that way too. Visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game day.
Welcome back to the Big 6 and 60. Georgia Tech football landed a quarterback out of the transfer portal with a national title and Heisman-winning DNA. Indiana's Alberto Mendoza made the move to the Yellow Jackets, and Locked On Georgia Tech host Caleb Johnson has more on the show.
Jarvis, kind of want to talk about who he is. I didn't know if he would be coming, which is a transfer portal quarterback deciding to come to Georgia Tech, as we now learned earlier today that Alberto Mendoza just won a national championship and is now going to be amongst the mix for the Yellow Jackets in 2026. Jarvis, let me ask you in this way. Do you feel like this is a big get for Georgia Tech?
If you look at where the school is coming from, if you look at who his brother is, just from a national brand piece, because they've done stories on those guys, talked about how Alberto supports his brother, all the time. You see him tweeting about his brother and giving him all type of praises and everything. So those guys are super close. But when you kind of take away the last name, I say it's a get from a standpoint of really building up that competition, because I said that's the only way you're going to make that jump that Brent Key always talks about. Like, he's talked about, or had on his side of his hat. Like, hey, you talking about making a jump, bring guys in so guys can compete. So guys won't get stagnant or guys won't get comfortable. Hey, I'm going into the season with being a starter. I'm good to go. Nah, we don't want none of that. Like, I think that Brent Key was very honest with Mendoza, saying like, hey, man, I think that you have a certain skill set that we're used to watching, and I'm not going to compare him to who. I'm not going to even say his name, because I don't want anybody to get anything misconstrued about what I'm about to say. Mendoza is an athletic quarterback. He actually played the wide receiver position before he moved to quarterback, because he said he wanted to be better than his brother. And, that's coming from the high school coach's mouth. So, hey, that is a direct quote. So I think that when you look at some of the things that he brings to the table and you understand where he's coming from, so he understands what it takes to win the big ones. He didn't play in most of them, but he was in that culture. He understands what Signetti was doing, and he understands what his big bro was doing. So I feel like when you look at the type of guy that you're getting and taking away that last name, I feel like it is a solid get. I say a solid get. I can't say big.
Yeah, I will say it's a big get from this aspect of, you kind of mentioned it there towards the beginning, of the coverage that his family has received, the attention that gets brought when you have now the last name Mendoza. Clearly, Fernando was the attention getter, Heisman Trophy winner, national champion, all of those sorts of things. Offensive player of the game, like all of the accolades came with Fernando because he was the starting quarterback. He was the guy leading the way. However, what do you know about what's going to happen in 2026 now that the other Mendoza brother, that I'm sure he will want phrased in a different way, but what that will bring to Georgia Tech, which is eyeballs. And you know what eyeballs gets? Attention. And you know what attention brings? Recruits, player, talent, people who want to be associated with the program, because there's going to be an additional layer of attention around the program. And so just from that aspect alone, I think it's a beneficial thing, because you'll have the college game days wanting to check in on how Alberto Mendoza is doing. Whether he's a starter or not, and we're going to have that conversation later in the show, but there's going to be a check-in on that strictly because of his name, because of his family's name. And you also know that there is an element of well-rounded individual that's coming in. Like the way that Mendoza family raised their kids is absolutely incredible. And I like that element coming onto campus and being infectious in the locker room in a really, positive way can only be a good thing for this program. And I'll add this one last thing, Jarvis, is that it's always nice when you hear someone else in the conference was interested in a player and went after said player. And that is apparently what happened with Duke. And so to see someone else in the conference interested in him, go after him, but you ultimately end up with him, I feel like for that element, this is a big get for Tech.
Yeah, man, I'm with you on that, because here's the thing. I look at where this conference is, and we've had conversations, off air and on this show as well, about what James Franklin can potentially do for the branding purposes of this conference. Like, he is a brand. He was one of those names in the Big Ten when he was the head coach at Penn State. And when you are bringing guys from that particular conference and you talk about the whole Duke aspect of it, because we know they're willing to pay and they're trying to get some of their money back, and they're trying to, strong arm some people to stick around.
Do they want a refund, or do
they want a refund? They want them to stick around. They want, you're like, hey man, you ain't going nowhere. They got the gun out, they got the pistol out, and everything, man. You ain't going nowhere, dog. Like, you got our money. We want some yardage. We want some more yardage. You got a 2-year deal, sir. We need you to come back. So I bring that up to say, like, when you look at where this conference is headed, Miami making a run. We talk about how Tech can, potentially make represent the conference in the conference championship, but potentially go to the playoffs, and how the steps they need to take to get there. I feel like there's a lot of good things going on in this conference. And I think that when you bring in a guy like Mendoza and you exercise your patience, right, and wait for a guy like that to bring into the fold, it lets me know that Key understands where this thing is potentially headed as well.
The NFL playoffs are rolling along, and FanDuel is officially in playoff mode. Every game day during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers every reason to get in on the action. Right now, every NFL playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost pack waiting for them inside the app. Each game day, you'll see a pack loaded with multiple profit boosts you can apply to the bets you like most. Open your profit boost pack first thing on game day and see what boosts you want to apply. The boost lets you lean into your game day instincts, whether you're backing momentum, defense, quarterback play, or coaching. Every play feels bigger, and the boosts make your bets feel that way too. Visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game day.
Welcome back to the Big 6 and 60. The UCLA Bruins hosted Purdue last night and took down the number 4 Boilermakers, and Coach Mick Cronin went after the Big Ten in the post-game presser too. That gives Locked On UCLA host Zach Anderson-Yocksteamer plenty to discuss.
The Bruins somehow get the job done over number 4 Purdue. In what was a near sellout, they gave out thousands of John Wooden bobbleheads. The Bruins pull off the upset, getting number 4 Purdue their second loss of the year. The Bruins, who entering the day were on the wrong side of the bubble. Joe Lunardi had updated something on ESPN saying the Bruins are on the bubble, tweeted out on his own social media page that UCLA's not even in the tournament. They're next 4 out. They're the back 8 looking on the wrong side in. Well, UCLA's got a win that nobody else does. I know those NorCal schools have been close to getting big wins. I know USC was close to getting big wins. No, UCLA came back after getting some tough travel schedule. Going to the Midwest, going back west to play Maryland. Going east, looking bad against Ohio State. Coming west, still with some Sky Clark injuries. A UCLA team that got zero production from the bench. And you know what? Despite playing a team that was traveling but had more rest being out west, Purdue, despite a rough game against USC, won that. The Bruins played a Mick Cronin-like game. This felt eerily similar to how UCLA played against Arizona. The Bruins were kind of back and forth early against the Wildcats, played well, and it felt like, oh, they're up 5. They had that chance to break away. Couldn't. Purdue went up 6 with about 2 minutes left, a minute and a half left. You're like, dude, this feels exactly like the Arizona game, right? There was one chance where Cronin put in Jamerson for Booker. Jamerson got a big rebound, and then he committed a foul. What was the big sequence, I thought, was when Jacobson for Purdue had a big rebound, had a putback. I think it was Jacobson or it was Clough. I don't exactly remember who it was. He got fouled on a putback, missed a free throw. Purdue got the rebound, and then Smith hit a bucket to go up 4. UCLA responded with the 3, only for Purdue to go up 4. Well, no, it was the Donovan Dent legacy game. The guy who we've been lamenting, the guy who's been waiting for the moment. Donovan Dent, when he needed to do it the most, came out and said, all right, I'm going to put this team on my freaking back. 3 blocks. He had a steal, 13 assists. I don't know what the percentage of points that Donovan Dent assisted on or helped for UCLA in this game of 69 points, but he scored 23 of them. And then if you mix in what he assisted, more than 50 to 60 or 70% of the points tonight for UCLA. In a game where there weren't many free throws, 10 combined free throws, UCLA took care of the basketball. They blocked more shots than Purdue, and Purdue has bigger size than the Bruins, all right? They don't have excellent size. When you're looking at Booker's sometimes timidness, you're looking at Jamerson off the bench. It was the Dent legacy game. You're talking about the best point guard in the Big Ten. Yes, I know he's banged up. UCLA did this without Sky Clark, who's been their most consistent guard all year long, shooting the three, scoring off the dribble, defensively, doing it all. And despite all that, you're like, man, UCLA's down 12 before the half. We're like, same old Bruins, down 27-15 in the first half. And oh, by the way, you know what was the biggest shot? That weird clanked, bricked shot that went in for Dent at the buzzer the first half off the back iron and dropped. And then when UCLA was down 6, you know what? Dent came in. He knew UCLA needed a bucket. He's been afraid to shoot threes all year long. He came up, stepped up, and drilled one in the face of the Purdue defender when Purdue was about to pull it away. Then the Bruins got a big steal, led to a bucket, got another stop, led to UCLA having that final possession, despite a couple of timeouts and the take foul that I think was so horribly given by Purdue. I think that was horribly executed by Matt Pater's team. Horribly so. With that take foul with like 20 seconds. Like, I don't really understand what was the point of that. Only for UCLA to get a double on Dent, kick out to Bilodeau, who's probably the one guy you don't want to leave open if you're Purdue. And Bilodeau got red hot in that second half, hit 4 threes. Basically, all his scoring was from the three-point line and a gamer. This felt big like the Wisconsin win last year, but played out similar to the Michigan State game where the Bruins got that late bucket to get the job done. And you know when UCLA was successful last year? This time last year, they had a 7-game stint on the West Coast. That's exactly what UCLA has in this one now. They came back from a weird East Coast trip where they survived for the most part. They have a better winning record overall and in Big Ten play to this point. Now they're on the West Coast for a long time. It took a Tuesday night home win. I believe it was a Tuesday night home win for UCLA that changed the season. A shocking one against Wisconsin. You know what UCLA did in this one? A Tuesday night home win that kind of got the crowd back into it. That's the vibes Pauley Pavilion should be rocking all Big Ten season long. And now you're going to start playing teams, if you're UCLA, that are beatable on your schedule. Because UCLA has now played the number 1 team in the country, a top 10 Gonzaga team, a top 4 Purdue team. You mix in Wisconsin, who went and beat a number 2 Michigan team. What are they afraid of? What are they afraid of now? The Bruins host Northwestern. They're playing an Oregon team that's beat up on the road. You're hosting an Indiana on the bubble, hosting Rutgers, hosting Washington before you go play Michigan. You're telling me those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games, right? Your 6-game West Coast stretch, that is enough for UCLA at this point to get close to 20 wins. They can execute that. And all of a sudden you go from next 4 out to borderline 9 seed in a day. I'm not sure how many wrongs this is going to jump up the Bruins, let alone affect the net ranking. I don't have that in front of me. It's game changing. Now UCLA, the worst thing is we have to watch them. They lose this game, they lose it bad, you can write them off. They win this game, and the way they did it, the comeback, the game that they needed their swagger back. UCLA hasn't had their swagger this year. They had a little swagger against Arizona. It seemed like they were timid and had limited swagger versus Zaga. And now the Bruins are like, wait a minute, we got some swagger. You go beat Northwestern, you avoid the letdown in the next couple weeks heading into the middle of February when you play Michigan and Michigan State. You still got, a top 11 Illinois team later. You got USC who's hyped, Nebraska who's big time. There are opportunities for UCLA at home and on the West Coast to build a resume that is now wide open, looking for stamps to punch their ticket into the NCAA tournament. That is wide open once again. UCLA did this without their best three-point shooter. They did it without Sky Clark. I know Purdue had longer travel, but they still have been here longer than the Bruins. They were here playing USC on a Saturday night, And UCLA was flying back from Columbus after a week out east. Like, this is stunning. And the fact they're down 6 with a minute and a half to play, like, what are we talking about here? Let's go over the rest of this stuff. Xavier Booker, I said in my podcast with Nick Arvin, we needed to see something from him. I was sitting there getting ready to come on this podcast that UCLA desperately was going to lament Mick Cronin's fractured relationship with the Daimara. Because you can tell how much that Donovan Dent needs a good big. Why? Because if he's crashing into the hole, the bigs have to respect the lob threat to a big. That would be Mata. Or this could be Booker. But he's still afraid to get that jam. And Jamerson doesn't earn enough minutes. And Brandon Williams just isn't that guy that pairs well with Donovan Dent as the 5. So now you look at what could have been fractured. Instead, Dent was productive, hit a 3. He had 3 blocks, 4 boards. Cronin desperately wanted to take Booker out in the wrong moment, but Jamerson committed a foul. Booker, after a 2-minute start, played 35 minutes and survived, and I think is slowly building confidence. Bilodeau put out there his 3-point stroke. Yeah, it wasn't his best scoring night, but when it came to the Purdue bigs, he scrapped all night long and drilled threes just about every big moment of the game. UCLA needed to go up 4, hit it. When UCLA's down 4, hit it. For the win, hit it. Yelled a big time, bang, bang, bang. You look at Trent Perry. Perry with a huge steal, easy assist to Daly when UCLA was down 3, cut it to 1. He had an 11-point night. He hit 3 threes. And UCLA in this game shot more efficiently from 3, made more threes, and that's the difference between previous Mick Cronin teams. This Bruins team is better at 3-point shooting. And while that's Purdue's somewhat bread and butter outside of feeding the bigs, UCLA was able to get 3-point shots from a team that was missing their best 3-point shooter. We didn't see a lot of Jamerson. There was non-existence from Jamar Brown and Brandon Williams. If you told me we had 8 minutes from Eric Freeney, 8 minutes from Eric Freeney as your longest tenured reserve coming off the bench, and you're telling me UCLA won that game? Are you serious? Are you being serial right now? Yeah, that's how UCLA. I don't believe it. The Bruins survived a great outing from CJ Cox, who Arvin of Locked On Boilermakers was saying off-ball defender, played well. Fletcher Lawyer didn't do much. You had Trey Kaufman-Renn, who had a rather quiet night outside of a last-minute put-back bucket. And I think the way it was called, physical, but not overly physical, not a lot of free throws, didn't punish UCLA, who basically played with 5.5 dudes all game long. Purdue had more bench, they had more options, a lot more depth, they were better, but the Bruins won the game. While being severely shorthanded, weary, traveling, super tired from the travel, everything still led to UCLA winning this game. A game changer in the Donovan Dent legacy game that over the next 2 months could change the trajectory of his short UCLA career. Could he go from legend, from the guy who we could point to as, oh, what's wrong with the NIL, to, man, there's a reason Mick Cronin targeted this dude as his senior leader. And he stepped up in their biggest game of the year thus far. I'm hyped to the nth degree. Now let's get some hype. Let's talk UCLA hoops every day. Man, I'm hyped. I am hyped. And they have a chance to go on a winning streak of legitimately 6 straight games. And is that possible? Is that likely? I'm not sure. Are they consistent enough to do it? Who knows? But it's the same type of year, same time of the year that last year the Bruins went from chumps to competitors. Out of the tournament to stacking up a resume and a winning streak, that they were consistently winners and in the tournament by the time March rolled around. It wasn't a question last year. Same time, right on schedule. I'm not sure I'm ready for a John Rothstein tweet that says Mick Cronin more consistent than what, some movie on a rainy Saturday, whatever it is, or Sunday. But man, just like last year, the Bruins can set themselves up for success. All right. So here the Bruins go. They're off, and I'm hyped.
The NFL playoffs are rolling along, and FanDuel is officially in playoff mode. Every game day during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers every reason to get in on the action. Right now, Every NFL playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost pack waiting for them inside the app. Each game day, you'll see a pack loaded with multiple profit boosts you can apply to the bets you like most. Open your profit boost pack first thing on game day and see what boosts you want to apply. The boost lets you lean into your game day instincts, whether you're backing momentum, defense, quarterback play, or coaching. Every play feels bigger, and the boosts make your bets feel that way too. Visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game day.
Welcome back to the Big 6 and 60. Luka Doncic went into Denver and led the Lakers to a win last night, finishing with 38 points, 13 rebounds, and 10 assists against the Nuggets. The Kamenetsky brothers recapped the performance on Locked On Lakers.
Andy, I'm not going to say there aren't bigger wins in Lakers history than this one, because that would be ridiculous. But in terms of this season, what they did in Denver on Tuesday night, a big 115-107 win over the Nuggets behind a masterful effort from Luka Doncic. This was as good of a win as they've had this season.
This was one of the biggest wins of the season. If it's not the best comeback win of the season, it's got to be pretty close. I would say it is top three in either respect. It was also a game, and I guess by definition, if I mention there's a comeback, it means something had to have gone wrong in the first half. But the first half was littered with so many disasters. You would not have seen this final result coming, whether you are, and we'll break down exactly what went wrong before we explain how incredible it was that the Lakers managed to turn this thing around and how many different guys chipped in to make it happen. You know, led by Luka Doncic, led by LeBron, but a lot of different guys chipping in. But to put this in perspective, Denver shot roughly 1 billion% from behind the arc in the first quarter. Just absolutely.
I believe they made 9 of their first 11 three-pointers.
They did. They made 9 of their first 11 three-pointers. They scored 71 points in the first half. The Lakers gave up 9 points in the final 52 seconds of this game. Disasters
of the half.
Excuse me, of the first half. They gave up 9 points in the final 52 seconds of the first half. Just disasters on both sides of the ball. Things, we'll break down the details, that you might not have even thought were possible managed to happen in those 52 seconds to close out the first half. But then the Lakers turned so many different things around in the second half, had so many different guys step up to make this happen. Like, this was a terrific win for the season.
Want to let people know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Before tip-off, check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA happy hour every Friday from 6 to 7:30 Eastern or 3 to 4:30 on the West Coast. Yeah, I mean, and one of the interesting things about and encouraging things even really about the Toronto win on Sunday at the Crypt was that they did it without a big performance from Luka. It was nice to see the Lakers manage to beat a good team, and Toronto has played quite well this year. Managed to beat a good team without having to rely on some sort of supernova performance from Luka. That was then. This is today, Andy, and Luka. They got the other half of that in this game on Tuesday, where Luka, in basically every moment he was on the floor, except for one of those goofy turnovers at the end of the first half that led to a Gordon 3. Luka controlled every aspect of the game while he was playing. He finishes with 38 points on a very efficient 12 of 21 shooting. He made 11 of his 12 free throws. He was the best free throw getter and maker for the Lakers, who were not very good from the line in the game. It's really the only blemish that they had as a team. But he had 13 rebounds, 10 assists. He had a pair of steals. And again, just controlled every aspect of the game while he was on the floor. Fantastic Luka performance. So they got the game where they beat the good team without a big performance from Luka. nice to know you can still do it when he does give you a classic Luka game.
He opened 6 of 6 for this game with 16 points. At the 2:20 mark of the first quarter, I believe the rest of the team only had 6 points. So this was one of those first quarters that, I mean, we've talked before how at times it has felt like these first quarter Luka-paloozas, while incredible theater to watch, aren't always the best way to get the rest of the guys in rhythm, to really establish a good offense. In this particular game, with the way Denver was hitting every single shot, I did not give an F where the Lakers got their points. They just needed to keep pace as best as possible. Luka in that first quarter was huge.
Yeah. And so, you start looking around the roster for other good performances that they got. LeBron, particularly big in the second half, 8 of 15 from the floor, 9 rebounds, 8 assists. He had 19 points. He was a plus 13 on the night, which is good to see. Marcus Smart had 15 points, hit half of his 3-point attempts. And then Andy, you look
huge
at the
fourth quarter three. I believe all 3 of his threes were in the fourth quarter, and they were huge.
Yes,
buckets.
It's nice to see the Lakers hit shots. So like when those, I call them gotta have it threes. Where like it's open, it's there, it's the time of game where you need to be able to hit an open shot. The Lakers got a couple of those, and obviously from Smart. Nobody scored double figures coming off the bench, which is not unusual for the Lakers, but they did have 3 guys who had 9. And so between Rui Hachimura and Jackson Hayes, who started the second half for DeAndre Ayton, who got poked in the eye, hopefully won't miss too much time. And then, of course, Drew Timme, 9 points in 11 minutes. JJ Redick, I think very much is trying to figure out how to use him strategically, because he's got a lot of offensive skill. I believe he's the leading scorer in Gonzaga history, which is saying something, because there've been a lot of good players who've gone through and played there. So the guy's got plenty of offensive skill. He's slow AF, as the kids might say, but he's got a lot. And so Lakers coaching staff trying to figure out how to use him in ways where they can maximize the offensive capabilities. He was big. It just felt that they looked like a good team. They just looked like a quality team, especially in the second half, building on that Toronto game.
Well, I was going to say that one of the things that we talked about a lot after that win over the Raptors was it was the most cohesive, just as a group, that the Lakers had looked in a while. Like the best they had looked in terms of just playing with intentionality, in terms of playing with everybody seemingly on the same page. It's 2 good, right? If you want to say 1.5 good defensive performances in a row. And, the first quarter with Denver just crushing it from outside was a combination of the Lakers messing up some coverage, a zone that JJ said they opened with, and as he noted, the man afterwards when we adjusted wasn't much better, but struggling.
He said it was worse.
Yeah, struggling with some coverage, and also too Denver making at times some pretty contested shots, but they picked things up as they went along. I want to talk about, over the course of this show, some of the adjustments that JJ made defensively that I really liked, in particular because they reflected JJ getting outside of his comfort zone, which is something that I said before, on both sides of the ball. I feel like JJ can be reluctant to do the things that he doesn't.
It was let's do that next, because it was a defensive adjustment that set the tone for a second half in which the Lakers allowed 36 points.
Yep.
36 points in the second half, 17 in the third, 19 in the fourth. That is a stunning bit of work.
That's all for today's Big 6 in 60. If you follow basketball, football, or college sports, the Big 3 in 30 has a half hour on the biggest news in the NFL, the NBA, or on campus going up every weekend just like we do here. Just search the Big 3 in 30 NBA, the Big 3 in 30 NFL, or the Big 3 in 30 college, wherever you're listening or watching now. Thanks again for tuning in to the Big 6 in 60.